Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Red YouTube channel and to not a returning episode of the Solitary series, but to a rebranded Red Tech Live. We've got myself, Cleigh Reed, James Lucarelli. Really looking forward to getting this started. And Cleigh, do you want to jump in as to why we've made a little bit of a shift in a name here?
Yeah, I mean, well, look at us. We're not even solitary, right? There's three of us. There's usually three of us at this point. And realistically, Red Tech is an opportunity for us to show you cool stuff that goes on with the camera, but this is a chance for us to dig a little bit deeper and interact with you guys immediately in this live scenario. And so it just made sense to put a little rebrand on it, because Red Tech's really what this is about.
Yeah, awesome, yeah. And obviously, with the launch of the V-RAPTOR now, we thought, just like we did with Komodo, we'll come in and we'll do a getting started with V-RAPTOR session, dive in. What do I need for my power, my media, accessories? How am I using the camera? But this time around, we really wanted to come in and focus a lot more on a bit of a Q&A. So we're going to kind of split the session in the middle, do a bit of a wrap up of getting started as Cleigh has got his rig set up there, and then dive in and answer some questions. So I reckon kind of without further ado, we kind of get started. I'm going to start us off with power and media. James is going to talk lenses and UI. I'll wrap around and touch on the monitor, and then we'll head into some Q&A. So I'll just head over to my camera over here, and we will start on some power. So V-RAPTOR, this is the body, obviously absolutely tiny. And you know, this is what's so awesome about the camera in how small it is. We've got a micro V-lock plate here on the back. And you know, it's a 75mm width. So this is what you'll be able to natively mount onto the body itself. This is gonna, you know, allow you to power it. And you know, if you want something a little bit larger, there's gonna be some accessories that we'll discuss a little bit later on. So battery simply slots on the back just like that. And you'll see when the DC is input into the camera, it is gonna be charging the battery when the camera is powered off. So it charges at around 2.5 amps. So it's a pretty decently fast charger. You can see my battery is almost charged up there. I've been charging it just before the stream here. Uses the same DC input connector, 11 to 17 volts, just like on DSMC2. So all of your same connectors or adapters, or if you wanted to get a battery plate on some rails, all those kind of things are going to work just the same as well. So moving forward from getting your camera powered is obviously media. So we've made the change over to CF Express Type B, showing one off there. This mounts just over here on the side of the camera, just like that. See a little gasket around there, slides just in there. And you know, when you're looking at CF Express Type B cards, there are a lot of them on the market. There are lots that can do very different sustained read and write speeds. And you know, in development of the camera, we tested a lot of these. We wanted to ensure that cards could meet those read and write speeds. So when you're recording 8K at 120 FPS, that card can sustain it. So we did a lot of testing, and some of them couldn't meet that. So currently, the approved media is the cards that we've worked very hard with Angelbird. We're looking and working with other manufacturers to get more approved media out there. But if you're shooting high frame rates, 8K, 50 FPS, 60 FPS, above that, using approved media is really what we suggest, so you don't run into any media write errors or any kind of issues like that. So that kind of gets us started with our power and our media. James is now going to take over and show us some lenses and some UI.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Johnny. Well, I think the one thing that I wanted to point out right there when you were still on that media page is anyone coming over from your Komodo system, the ridge on your CFast 2.0 card was facing forward. If you go back to that, the ridge when you're doing this blindly and pulling it in is the opposite direction. It's facing towards you, and you can see that when you look at that little gasket as well. So let's go ahead and look at the front of this native RF mount that has been more enhanced with this rugged locking ring right here. And we're gonna go ahead and get hands-on with that right now. Now, the good news is if anyone has any of the existing Komodo RF to EF or RF to PL adapters, that's what I'm currently using right here. And you can easily see this is the one that has the built-in ND right here into the mount. Now, as we're gonna go ahead and remove this, anyone that's used a EF lens knows there's this little release button right here at about 3 o'clock, and then there is a 12 o'clock indicator up here. So I'm gonna go ahead and make sure I undo this locking ring right here, make sure that's all the way down, and I'm going to hold this button and go from 3 o'clock to 12 o'clock. Now the same thing you can see on the other side here with the red dot right there, and we're going to align that right there at 12 o'clock. Now this is the key thing for everyone in the field. Make sure that when you align that up, that you hold down this ring right over here, because as you turn this over, it has a tendency to drift, and really, as I lock this in, you're going to make sure that this ring stays right over here. Once this is already intact, you can then begin to move this locking ring up here, and a key point here is that different lens adapters and lens mounts will have different thresholds, right? One might stop right there, one might stop right there. The key thing is I'm not forcing this any further, and this robust ring is just going to make sure that you don't have any wiggle and jiggle with either your RF to EF, or I have my RF to PL mount right here as well. And once again, these are the same mounts that worked with your Komodo, you just now have the addition of working with full frame lenses as well. Now transitioning over to the user interface, this has me really excited because from a lot of my camera operators and ACs, we wanted to have a standard user interface on the camera right side where everyone wants it. And looking at the screen here, you're not really going to be able to change the buttons are laid out here on this main screen, but you may want to go ahead and change your shutter from perhaps an integration time to a degree, or perhaps your temperature here from your white balance here from a preset to a temperature, right? You can see that very easily right there. And for myself, I like to go ahead and use these up and down buttons right here, and that allows me to easily get to my RGB parade or my iris control right here if I had a lens attached. I could go down one more menu and easily get to focus, peaking, false color, all of my video assists that I've previously used to with my Red cameras. And I'm really excited about these custom user pages. So now when the director calls for false color or peaking on their monitor, I don't know if you saw that on my phone, but really the director would be seeing this. And notice right here on my camera user interface, I'm never affecting their screen, and I can turn on peaking or false color or whatever preset, or confirm that I'm in the right preset. And all of that has up to 3 user pages. And if you don't see all 3 at first, this is something that can be toggled on in your user settings. Very key thing to note right there. And another great thing about this is that these are physical hard buttons. They are not a touchscreen. It's really nice to have these hard buttons for when you're using a housing or maybe a larger shoulder rig here, really to have that and have physical buttons and controls.
I mean, what's really cool there is being able to build a preset in there as well. So if you want to have an 8K VV 24 FPS master preset, you could then come in and create a 6K S35 high-speed preset or a 2K super slow-mo preset and go between all of those really, really quickly. I mean, even things like the front record button, you can remap that. So if you wanted that to be your false color and have a really quick toggle to get that on and off, if you've got it on like a handheld rig, there's just so much customizability and flexibility you can do with this, as James is showing through the app there, that you could load those presets into these user pages.
And these are my...
How cool is that? Go ahead, James.
No, go ahead, Clay.
All I was going to say is how cool is that like this all integrates with this idea of a multi-format camera, right? So that you could build these presets for different frame rates and different sensor crops so that you could utilize different lenses and know all of this ahead of time as a production so you can move even faster on set.
I mean, one of the things in terms of moving faster, James, I mean, if you go into the frame rates menu, we've now got a max frame rate option that you can view. You know, one of the questions I always found when I was on set, people were like, oh, wait, what's the highest frame rate we can get again? In this menu now, you can go, so if we go down to 2K or 4K, we can get 300 or 150 or anything like that. Just, again, getting you in and out of the UI as quickly as possible. Those of you who are familiar with Komodo will feel very at home here. And those of you moving from DSMC2 or DSMC1 camera, just the speed and the intuitiveness of this is amazing. I mean, Clay, you've been shooting with this loads. How are you finding the UI?
It's so much easier. And it's funny because you start to find these little rhythms that are, you know, different than the rhythms that they were before. But for me, it's so useful. Like I use RF lenses a fair amount, so I'm clicking down into that iris really fast. I'm doing a lot of these different things that are much, much easier. And like you said, Johnny, the presets and knowing those different high frame rates are all just speeding me up. Like I think that's the part for me that has been sort of an unlock about this camera. It's like all about speed, not just how fast it shoots, but how fast you can use it and how fast you can get through menus and get to the places that you want. And like, especially in that main mode where that original menu, sorry, James, but if you go in here, each of these are a little portal, and they're really well crafted to the menus that you're going to use. You know, like, okay, let's get in there and change our monitoring setup, right? Okay, media is really important. Changing my project base might be really important. Having all of those things immediately right there and not having to do more than one click into the menu to get to some of those features. And then you add that you have user pages and it's physical buttons, right? So I'm not smudging the side of that. It's not on my operator side, so my face isn't touching buttons the whole time. There's not a light next to my head if I operate on my shoulder. So I think there's like some of the things about the way it's been ergonomically built just lend themselves to that speed.
Especially just the speed of how things like magnify work. You know, those of you with DSMC2, the magnify took a few seconds to punch in. Now it's as quick as on DSMC2. Black shading on V-RAPTOR is now half the speed that it was on Monstro. All of these things through this iterational upgrade have just made the camera so nice and fast to work with. And I think while we're on the topic of speaking about UI, the monitor comes up very, very naturally. So I think we might as well dive over to the monitor and check that out. So I'll just kind of move over here and get myself over here. So we've had so many awesome questions about the monitor, mainly how, you know, what's the UI like? How does it work? How does it function? What's different compared to DSMC2? And we've worked really hard with Small HD on this to make, you know, take everything that's amazing with the Small HD Page OS, and then also bring in a red twist to it, you know, get the information such as the histogram and your exposure tools over here, all of those menu UI features. So coming in here, having access to all of that stuff really, really intuitively and really, really quickly. You know, one of the really cool things that I like, for example, is my crop factor. So, you know, commonly, you know, when you're on set and you're going down to 4K, hey, what's that crop factor wise? So if we come down to, let's go down to 4K, because that's quite a common one for some high frame rate. 4K 2:1, we can see 1.6 crop. Immediately, or 2.7 times crop there, sorry, you can calculate what that means lens-wise as well. You haven't got to go onto red.com and use the calculator tool to work out what that is. All of these things are just so nice to work with. On top of that, you've got all of the Small HD options as well. So you've got your exposure windows, your focusing windows, your scopes, waveform. People have always asked about waveform. Thanks to the features of Page OS, we can now have that in here and customize it to our own liking as well. So I can come in here, I can add image capture. We've got an SD card on here, so I could come in here, take a screen capture of my scene. I can come in, take screen grabs of that really, really quickly. I can come in, turn that off again. As you can see, that's now saved to our SD card. Turn that off. Maybe I really want to have zebras or some custom D-squeezes on there if I've got a really obscure anamorphic lens. Color picker, all of these things are really, really nice. And also, in some of those deeper menus, being able to come in and calibrate the screen as well. With DSMC2, we didn't quite have that functionality, but if you want to calibrate the screen to a reference monitor on set or just calibrate it for a specific gamma you're looking for, coming in here allows you to do that. All of your image rotation options, all of those kind of things in here, it just works so smoothly and intuitively. Cleigh, I know you've been shooting with it for quite a while. Is there anything that you've been really enjoying about the monitor so far?
I think the reality is that what's so great about it is the comfort and how familiar it is. The workflow from DSMC2 having that touch function monitor on the top of the camera has been something that's a staple of my shooting style for years and years at this point. And the idea that now I can use all that same control and monitoring functionality with different tools, with the Page OS improvements that you were talking about, while still monitoring things from the raw channel, and all of this is just, in my opinion, a little bit better, right? It's that little step up from what we were doing before, but the comfort and the ease, once again, leads back into that speed. It's how easy to use this system is that really has me super excited, because the reality is that these tools are what we need every day to do our jobs, and making them easier makes life easier. And so it's like these are little things where even the short time that I was using it without this specific top monitor, monitoring off of SDI and having to interact with the side of the camera or my phone, these are great options if you have a rig that requires it. But there's just something so quick and easy about grabbing the camera in this sort of position, holding it in front of me with the monitor and then being able to quickly tap a setting and change it. It's just a really easy way to use the camera.
I mean, especially with the monitor, because you've kind of got the best of both worlds. We've got this single USB-C style cable going into the RMI module. You can remove this arm and mount it wherever you want. One thing just to call out here is that the USB-C cable, we are suggesting to just use the one from Small HD, because in testing with them, we found that a lot of USB-C cables aren't made to the same standard. A lot of them don't have the same wired pairs. They're not wired for power or data, or some of them have variations of this. Some of them have different quality levels. Some of them won't fit in this port or that port. So we're just saying and suggesting just to use the Small HD cables. We are also offering a longer cable. This is a 10-inch cable. There is a 39-inch cable if you want to go to a gimbal or something else like that. So it really does have that flexibility that you had from DSMC2 with the 2 monitor options. I think, James, you're about to say something there.
I was going to say flexibility, ease of use. A couple of things you did there just blew my mind coming from a DSMC2 world, right? Going from a horizontal scroll to a vertical scroll, right? Being able to tap on your RGB parade and make that full screen. Vector scope in camera is something that I've been asking for years, and it's great to just have all of that built right in there. And once again, I think this is the great thing, that on-camera monitors are great until you don't need an on-camera monitor and we want to move it elsewhere. And that's where the multiple quarter 20 points plus that movability of using that 39-inch RMI cable, and now we can move that anywhere to the back of the shoulder rig, to the front, and just that flexibility of being able to even flip and flop the monitor, right? I was like you, where I was using those 12G SDI outs, and that was more than enough to work with my existing monitors. But remember, just like Cleigh said, as soon as you use that monitor, you walk away from it, or it's not in the right orientation, and I could always grab my phone or that side user interface. So really, you're never locked out of your camera from any side of the camera. You really can get access to everything. This touchscreen is just where you're going to get that real benefit of Small HD's Page OS.
And this is one of the things where talking about presets earlier, this is something that I found so cool, that when you're making a preset, you don't always know the setting that you had it set to. So when you go to make a preset on the top screen, it shows you what you're currently set to. So if you're scrolling through and you go, oh, actually, I was not meant to be set to highlight roll off soft, you can go back, change that quickly. All of these little things just kind of moving in from DSMC2 and just making that whole experience, I've just found to be a super, super nice experience. But I think that's a little overview of the monitor. I can see we're at about 20 minutes now. So I think potentially at this point, I don't know about you guys, if there's anything else you want to touch on, we should maybe open up for a little bit of Q&A.
Yeah, I think talking about the Q&A would be great.
I think actually, Cleigh, I think you've actually got some stuff there that I can see you.
I didn't want to get greedy. I was just, just a little peek. Just what do we got going on over here? So this is a package that I've been shooting a lot, and it's sort of a combination of our 2 available packages right now. So what we're looking at is our top handle with the base plate, the ARCA, our blade over here, but then I've also got our 2 wing grip handles, because there's just something about that sort of gunner position filming that is really, really easy to do. And we've got a little focus setup over here with a latitude, and that's all possible because I did get some extra quarter 20s off the side with these side handles. And for me, it's been amazing, because just look at, this is fully rigged for tripod, but right into handheld setup, ready to go, no problems at all. And if I've got a great AC, then our focus is always good, and it's all set up to go real smooth. Well,
and Cleigh, while you're doing that, that's an Airy style plate on the bottom. I believe if you wanted to go onto something with 19mm rails, you could go onto something like an Airy BP9 right now, because those are what I think are 15mm, not lightweight, but standard 15mm, and you could dovetail right onto that and have all of the right heights and everything in the orientations you needed.
It's 50mm LWS, James.
Oh, that is.
To confirm that. Yep. But yeah, it's just a really nice setup. So obviously hoping we can get all of those shipped out as soon as possible. We're hoping mid-December, end of December kind of time frame at the moment. Obviously, with all of the shortages in the world, we're hoping we can still meet that deadline. But Cleigh's very lucky. I'm very jealous he's been able to be testing and shooting all of those bits and bobs. But as you said, let's fire open to some questions. So we'll have a little look in the chat and see.
I saw one about the blade. And
Oh,
the
here we
blade
go.
actually attaches to the ARCA plate that's on the bottom of the camera here. And I would pull it off, but I've got this focus motor on here. But you can see the ARCA plate below is where the blade actually mounts to. And then it goes into this EXT port right back here.
So basically on the bottom of the ARCA plate, there's on basically all sides of the ARCA plate, there's a load of M3, I think it's M3 Clay, little screw points and things like the ARCA
M4.
plate, M4 points, and that's where these accessories then screw into. So part of the production pack, there's some production blades or plates, they screw onto there as well. The battery adapter will screw into that ARCA plate again as well. Again, just to basically screw down all of these components to make it feel like it's part of the camera. A lot of the time when you put accessories on, they don't quite feel, harmonious as they were meant to be together. All of this stuff screws in nicely and beautifully. You can just see on that ARCA plate how nicely it's slotting in down the camera there.
Yep, and how's about adding some industry standard stuff to things? That's always a big win in my book.
All right. Let's see if we got any other questions here.
I saw one asking about the USB cable with the small HD monitor. So yeah, so with this monitor, there is no need for an SDI cable. This single cable is doing power, data, and video through that. So makes it really, really easy. What people loved about DSMC2 was reducing the clutter of the system. And you can see Clay's got a really nice clean rig there. Obviously, you've got to have cables for your motor and power for your motors. So basically 3 cables, including the cable for your monitor, keeping it really, really clean.
Yep. It's really a compact little piece of kit. I've been really excited because usually I wouldn't put this much stuff on something that I also shoot handheld. But because of the way everything's built so slim and lightweight, it's been really, really good to switch back and forth.
That's one of the things I've been enjoying about the wing grips, actually. No, go ahead, James.
Clay, what did you see, buddy?
So I saw somebody asking about RS2. And I wouldn't say that you should go for it. I would say test and play around. I've had great success on Movi Pro and on Ronin 2. I just haven't found a setup that I felt like I could say was like, yeah, RS2, no problem. I know people are great with people who focus on those smaller gimbals are amazing with counterbalance and will probably get it to work great. It's not something that from my testing I would be like, go for it.
Oh, I think I've got one for you here, Clay. Can we use Raptor as a run and gun camera? I think the king of run and gun, Clay, you can answer that one.
Shoot. Yes. Okay, so the other day I was actually just on a boat shooting a trick wake skier, and she was insanely good, doing flips all over the place. But realistically, I knew I wanted to get really close to the water, and I was a little bit sketched out because, like you said, there's not a ton of these guys hanging around. and so what I did is I actually rigged the camera all the way down to just the brain with my phone mounted on the top through the USB-C because my phone's pretty waterproof. The brain does just well. And so I went down there and got amazing stuff. And this was on the day, just go, okay, you know what? Screw it. I'm going to pull all the pieces off of this and full run and gun. Like, had it on a battery belt clip off the back, so there's no chance my battery's getting wet. And then I'm just in there, and got a couple of great, amazing shots that hopefully I'll get to show you later. And realistically, that's the most run and gun, in my opinion, you can get. I used the camera body and my cell phone. The only other thing I needed was a battery belt clip. Like that, how do you get more run and gun than that?
I mean, that's been one of the really nice things about, just in general, with this current generation Komodo and V-RAPTOR, having everything basically really tightly integrated and not needing those modules and accessories makes that coming out of a backpack so nicely. I found even when traveling or going between shoot to shoot, having the camera, a battery, a lens, and a monitor, it's so nice to whip it out. And because although it's the same length roughly as DSMC2, the height change I found has been really, really nice. Having a smaller profile camera in that sense has made it nicer for that kind of compact shooting style.
And a perfect time to have both the V-RAPTOR and Clay. I know you travel with your Komodo in the top of your backpack as well. So if you needed a B angle to your A angle, how are you treating that when you're matching the two and working with both Komodo and Raptor?
So, I mean, one of the great things is a lot of the time I'll pick one of our little 3D LUTs in there and use that as a baseline to just apply. So make sure that's applied to both, then I'm paying attention in some circumstances. And once again, like, people are going to be annoyed at me for saying this, but it's like I pay attention to stuff that's not very camera centric. In those scenarios, I'm looking at what lenses I'm pairing together, right? I'm looking at some of those things, like I said, like LUTs, things that are going to get me into a space where they match a little bit better right out of the gate. But then it all comes down to coloring. It comes down to your DI, right? Like, it comes down to once you've shot the footage, you get it in post, everything's a little bit different. I'm sorry, but even the angle of the sun from 2 different angles can make colors a little bit different, right? So realistically, it's all about having a good solid baseline where you're setting your settings similarly, but they're gonna look great because they're R3Ds.
I mean, this is something we touched on in the Red Arsenal video with Ranger, Monstro, Komodo, all of those ones. Again, just having that baseline and then coming in, you know, having the same Rec 709 curve. It's very nice to move in between it. And I mean, both sensors are very different in that sense. You've got a large format BV, fantastic dynamic range against an S35 global shutter camera, both performing very, very differently, different pixel pitches, all of these kind of things. But there's some really exciting content that's coming out soon and films that are being shot that you'll kind of see that really in the flesh, I think. So really looking forward to seeing that.
And I like pulling out my Red Control app because you can see my Komodo to my right and my Raptors right here. I use the same app with the same presets. Now, maybe not the same exact preset, but I'll make sure that I have both in similar formats. Clay, to your point, similar lenses, similar LUTs. And that way, when I'm dropping it into my timeline, really, we're not going to have this big switch there. It's going to really match really nicely.
So saw one from Philip asking how the monitor is removed from the camera. Okay, so let me go back over to my camera here and we can have a little look at that. So there's a couple of ways where the cable is initially attached. So firstly, the cable is attached down here. So actually, if I bring the camera up, this will be quite a nice way to illustrate it here. So let's get some close focus. There you go, I really need a focus puller here. So on this portion, you can see that there is a locking sleeve. So when it's tilted basically away from you or towards you, that's locked. But if I tilt this completely straight, you can see that the cable can then, it's still in there very snugly and firmly, can then be pulled out. So essentially from that point, you can then remove this from this little 15mm rod. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my camera down and I can show you how to do that. Firstly, I'm going to have to, let's focus up correctly there as well. Undo this little screw here. This kind of keeps that tension down. And then if I get my cable out the way, you can then wiggle this off this arm. Now, it is very snug on this, but then as I remove that, you can see that now that is removed. There's a little bolt just inside there. Hopefully you guys can see that. I then undo that bolt and I can then plug this cable back into there. I'll plug that in and then lock that. And either I could put this onto my own little 15mm rod over on this side. Let's just focus on it correctly so this frame looks nice. I could put it down here, mount it on a little rod or something like that, or take this off and have it on a little magic arm or a different monitor mount, and the monitor can then be mounted wherever I want. And then I can simply put it back on again whenever I want. Again, this monitor can be hot swapped and hot powered, so you haven't got to worry about powering off the camera each time. I can then come in, slide this immediately back on again, and go from there. But you do need to have this RMI attached. That's the thing. I've seen some people asking if they can use the rear USB-C port or these little EXP ports on the side. It's only the port that's in there that has all of this functionality. So then I simply lock that down again. I'm then gonna slide my cable back in, lock it down, and I immediately move between those two different setups very, very quickly. Whereas with DSMC2, that would have been a lot more difficult because you need to have other modules, other accessories, all those kind of things to make that happen. So it's a really nice intuitive system, screws down with 2 bolts down here. And then if you want to, you see we've got the trigger pass through. So if I move this up a little bit more, I can attach my top handle straight onto there. And that's then going to give me my run stop functionality. So I can actually screw this in. Same with the top handle that Clay was just showing. So I can come in here, secure that down, and I've then got my run stop button to help me record through there. So really, really nice little system.
Hey, and Johnny, stay right there with your camera, or keep your camera back up. I was going to ask this question here from Zach, and I know we touched on it just for hot swapping and power solutions. I know Clay talked about it with his documentary style, but one of the nice things about that power adapter on the back of the camera is that same 11.5 to 17 volt power adapter. So your DSMC battery belt clip would plug right into that option. And that would allow you to literally, Johnny could take off that battery right now and swap it with that one on the desk if it was charged. And that's a great way. I will keep that umbilical cord coming out of my backpack or clip it onto my sticks. And that's a great way that you can swap the batteries without having the new plates that are coming out. And we can talk a little bit more about that, but we are going to have a full-size V-lock as well as a gold mount adapter plate option coming out here in the very near future. So just know these are all options that will allow you to swap power for the time being.
Yep, and that'll unlock stuff like shark fins and other things people use on set to make sure that you have that hot swap ability.
Oh yeah, I saw one there about using the Komodo handle. Yep, that's correct. That works.
Yep. Sure. How cool is that? These are the type of things DSMC3 passing some accessories back and forth is really exciting to me because I like to keep the kit as minimal as possible, right? Bring as little stuff and be as functional with that stuff as I possibly can.
And with the touchscreens, maybe not always being in your hand, I will say the Komodo Small HD or the Cine 7s, those will all work via the SDI out for monitoring. Unfortunately, those aren't going to work for doing the same camera control. That's not quite the same thing there for V-RAPTOR. But remember, you do have the completely free Red Control app. You do have the side user interface on the screen. There's multiple ways to control the camera, even if that Small HD screen isn't communicating.
Yeah, I've been doing a lot of my gimbal work, especially to get the gimbal plates in a good way so that I can mount any which way I want for the size of my lens and get good balance. I've actually just been using the SDI and then controlling a lot of the functionality of the camera through that Red Control app. And by just adding, so I have my monitor mounted to my Ring, and then I have my phone mounted to my Ring as well. And so then my phone's just acting as a full-time stats display. It's telling me exactly what my specs are at. And then beyond that, I'm actually doing my monitoring for operation off of the SDI.
I kind of have one of those coming up right here, right there. Just a little monitor mount, little phone mount right there on my little gimbal. Yep. You could do the same thing.
Yep. Exactly.
Had a good question here from Greg. Are the SDIs set to output the same feed? So actually, you've got a couple of ways of working here. So they're both 12G SDI outputs. If they're set to both output 4K, you will be mirroring. But if you want to have independence, you can have one at 4K, one at 2K or HD, or both of them at HD, and they're then independent. So you can have one with clean feeds, one with an overlay, one with a log, one with a LUT. So it's really, really flexible. I mean, James, I don't know if you want to go into the menus, if you full screen on your camera, we can have a little look at you going into those menus. I'll just make you full screen here. So if you just go into those monitoring settings, we can see the control you have over the SDIs. So going down into monitoring, you come in there, and then SDI 1, 2, you then come in here. And currently, James, what have you got SDI 1 set to? So you've got 1080p. So in this one, you could set that to 4K DCI. And then if you then go out to SDI 2, you'll then see the SDI 2 then gets mirrored if you want to get 4K. So now both of those outputs are then 4K. But if you turn off mirror, you can then go down into resolution, and you can have a completely independent 1080p log LUT, because it could be maybe your director, they want to monitor in 4K because they're delivering to 4K streaming platforms, but then your DIT has a 1080p grading monitor, and they want to get a log feed. They can do the CDLs, all these kind of things. So you've really got that flexibility to control how you want that pipeline to work. And then also the top LCD can then also have its independence as well. So maybe you only want the top LCD to have your false color and your peaking, whereas both of your SDIs you want to keep independent from that. So it's nice that you've got all of these different pipelines you can kind of keep separate, basically.
Yeah, it's huge, even for technical purposes beyond just the aesthetic stuff, right? So you want your director to see an image that looks like what is closest to what they're going to see at the end, so they don't lose their mind because it looks flat or something like that. But then the flip side too is that, say you're really committed to an HDR finish, right? You know exactly where this is going to go, and you have specific things that you want to master for that. You could be monitoring HDR through one pipeline so that you don't once again, so you don't show the director or other people this softer looking image on an SD screen, like you have this ability to really get the technicals dialed in while the people who are just purely looking at aesthetics still have something that matches close to what the final is going to be.
And to the user interface pages, I built one specifically for monitoring out, because I get asked that as soon as we get on set, which monitor, who's getting which feed. So if I go up, 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 my third page is my SDI page, and this is where I could very easily make all my SDI2s on the bottom and my SDIs on the top, and really you could break this down to whichever way you want. And really, if I need to turn off that overlay, I don't even have to flip up here to the LCD, because I can clearly see that that's on or off, right? I think
it's one of those things actually where I found a lot of the time that I really like going through the side panel a lot of the time. Like I've had the monitor a couple of months now, and I still find actually having those quick toggles through the side LCD has been so nice. And actually, I think for a lot of ACs, they're going to really love this, where previously you would have to have an LCD hanging off the side of the camera, and that be your interface. This just proves how quickly and efficiently this kind of system is. I saw another question coming in from Let's Make Movies. Is there a way to extend the local network for the Red app? And there's a couple of ways you can work with the camera in that sense. You can have it in an ad hoc mode or an infrastructure mode. Now, ad hoc, the camera will be making its own network. This does limit you somewhat in terms of the range and the antenna that you use. It's a standard RP SMA connector, as long as you use a 2.4 or 5 gigahertz antenna. But you're really, at the helm of the environment that you're in. But if you have a little router or network adapter, you could connect your cameras to that. Now, that router hasn't got to be connected to the internet. You could have a router that is purely a LAN router, and then you could have that on set. You could plug it on the DIT cart. All the cameras can connect to that, and then that router will have a lot more strength and allow you to connect over longer distances or have more cameras connected, all of those kind of things, because you can only connect to one camera at a time through ad hoc, and you'd have to bounce between different camera connections if you want to change different cameras. So having a dedicated router on set could be really, really helpful.
Yeah, great question, great answer, Johnny. This is the thing. I've been bringing a router with me, like it's my specific camera router for multi-camera shoots, and I set that up, and everything works off of that. So I pull out my phone, and my phone's connected to it too, and it helps. I don't go into airplane mode or any of that stuff. I'm in this Wi-Fi network, boom, talking to all the different cameras, making decisions, switching back and forth. It makes it so usable.
And
I think
you
James
said
is pointing at the USB-C port there, exactly.
Yeah. And as soon as you say wireless, I typically go, can we put a wire out there? Can we have it? Stability. When we do live streams, yes, I have really good wireless, and that's great to have this half band antenna here, and you could potentially get a larger antenna. But that's where having that USB-C right there, really when you start to say extend your network, that's where I would say, can we get some cables out and really just have that be a cabled solution rather than, and it'll also help with your speeds too.
I mean, one of the things there by having that built-in USB-C port is if you do it to an Ethernet adapter, you can then actually upload things to the camera as well. So if you're working on set and there's a new LUT that's coming from production, or you've created one or something like that, you can upload CDLs, presets, LUTs, even firmware upgrades to the camera. So if you've got a number of cameras and there's been a new firmware upgrade that's come out, turn them all on, connect them to the same connection, push that firmware to all of them, and then through the Red Control app, just start updating them. So there's a load of really cool things you can do with this. You can download media as well if you've got a fast enough connection. So there's so many cool things you can do in terms of connectivity with this camera. Let's have a look at some other questions you've got coming in.
I know mod team's been over there killing it, especially with all our awesome Red
helping out
users in the chat.
And I don't know if anyone missed it, but just for changing the shutter from angle to degree, it really is just a hold down. So kind of like with the advanced push where you would hold down on the DSMC2, you can just hold down on shutter, and notice it went from 1/48 to a degree.
I think if you hold your finger to the side there, James, just so people can see it.
There we go. Thank you.
There we go.
I need some direction from time to time, so thank you.
Oh, I don't know if the person asking is the run and gun guy or if I'm the run and gun guy, but there was a question about autofocus. And man, it's a feature I've been liking. It's what's working the camera. Well, it's Komodo technically right now, but it's what's working in front of me right now. Make sure I don't totally blow it on this live stream. I've been using it to great success.
It's one of those things where also it really depends on the lens that you're using. So
Agreed.
different lenses will have different motors and different focus methods. So with the RF L series lenses, I've been having great success. Different cheaper lenses like the Nifty 50 1.8 lens, that kind of kit lens, then your experiences will differ as well there. So some differences between lenses as well.
And Johnny, I know when you were showing the touchscreen and just the autofocus box, one of the things to keep in mind there is, what are we shooting? If it's a talking heads interview, then make it a portrait style box, or if it's a car, we can change the orientation of that box. And with the touchscreen or with the app, it's pretty easy as long as you're actively operating to either move that box or change your framing slightly. If you keep that in mind, I've really been having great results.
So, I mean, just here with the monitor, being able to touch to focus, move things around, even move into continuous, change the size, go to a smaller size. And one of the things I saw was people asking, can I move that box around? And yes, you can move that box around to kind of wherever you need it to go. So it's really nice to have that ability through the screen to control that autofocus as well.
And to Clay's point, if he had his phone, or if Mark's in the room and Mark opens up his Red Control app, he could help your focus, right? Because sometimes Clay's running with the gimbal, and really someone could just make that quick touch adjustment for you. So it's really nice that you want to do it via the phone, you want to do it via the touchscreen. You've got multiple options right there.
Yeah, I recently did it via a makeshift housing. My buddy Jay came through with an old housing that was actually built for Red 1. And it's a huge submarine thing, but that was all I could think of that I was like, well, it'll fit in there, right? We could mod it and do some stuff and shitty rigs it so that it works and we can get it in there. And so we did that, and I was actually controlling, we were just doing like tide pool stuff and some tests to see what it looked like in the water. And I was controlling the camera and the focus from outside the housing. I couldn't be very far away, right? We're starting to cut that signal pretty quick, but just sort of right over his shoulder, I was getting functionality even out of that, which I was kind of surprised by.
This is quite a good question here, actually. I think there's a bit of two things to answer here. What cine lenses work great? I mean, one of the things initially, actually, when talking about mounting lenses on the camera is the lens weight that you can use before you need to think about any real serious kind of support. And our current directive is kind of anything that weighs more than the body of the camera, you should be either having some degree of mount support or some degree of lens support on there as well. When you start going beyond that, obviously big zoom lenses you will, but that's kind of like a good rule of thumb before you need to start thinking about that. I mean, Clay, you've got a PL lens attached there. What kind of sets are you using and finding different workability with?
I've been having great success with tons of stuff. It's funny that you said the weight thing, because one of the things I did recently was I actually put it on an older Canon 400, like the big old 2.8 ones, and actually hung the camera off the back like a DSLR at that point. I mounted the lens to the tripod, hung the camera, and then operated off the tripod and made sure I wasn't putting too much stress on that mount. So that stuff works great. I mean, anything that's full frame gets me going because I like the way that looks. But the realistic answer is like just about all of them, right? I mean, that's the beauty of a multi-format sensor, right? All the different looks, all the different lenses. Like we have this ability now through adapters that the only lenses you're locked out of are other mirrorless lenses, right? So other non-R mount mirrorless lenses. And that's not that many. And there's equivalents that match those in other places. And so when you really start breaking down the cinema stuff is largely built for S35 or the newer stuff built for VV, which is great. All of those work. So if you love Cook, okay, S7Is are great, but also S4i works great too, because you can go into 6K S35 mode, pump your frames per second up, and still get the look out of that lens that you were hoping to get. I was shooting it with Atlas lenses on there, which I really, really enjoyed. I've been doing just kind of a really wide range, and that's what's fun about what I get to do is, shoot, I'll throw a crappy kit lens like Johnny was talking about on it, and then follow it up with like an ultra prime or something. Like that's the kind of fun I get to play around with.
Another good question related to lenses here. in terms of the best RF to EF adapter, what options do you have with ND? And what's awesome is there's so many out there. Thanks to Komodo, which kind of brought a lot of RF to EF adapters out there, things like the Kippertie Revolver, which has a cartridge-based system. James was showing off the Canon adapter. Breakthrough Photography have a fantastic adapter as well. There's loads of really exciting ones out there, which again, it all depends on the type of ND filtration that you want. Do I want a cartridge system? Do I want variable ND? And there's pros and cons with all of those.
Yes.
In general, speaking
Am I scared
about adapters,
of IR leak?
Oh yeah.
And from someone that uses the Canon one, right? It's got this nice little nifty, easily touchable wheel over here. It's great to have just a little piece of gaffer's tape on here so that when I'm making an ND change, it's deliberate. It really helps me out for, hey, the cloud changed or the lighting changed. I want to make a deliberate change rather than it drifting through it. And we all know limitations with variable ND. There will be a color shift towards the end. So that's why everyone can find the level that you're comfortable with, or go ahead and remove that tray altogether and get a different breakthrough filter or something else that can drop in there.
Or you can get super creative and throw actual panes of glass up there with cool stuff in them, like I don't know, a cool diffusion or a black mist or something like that.
I mean, I think that's what the breakthrough filters have. They've got physical ND ones. I think they've got like some soft filtering and those kind of things as well, which is really nice. Which is also something that I've seen a lot of customers still love DSMC2 for, the fact that you can change out the OLPF system. So Kippertie makes some great OLPFs. You can change those in and get rear lens filtration as well as having a Kippertie ND mount or the breakthrough DSMC2 mount. So one of the things we were talking about the other day is customers still choosing between DSMC2 and V-RAPTOR as well in our Arsenal video.
Mm-hmm. And I see the question here from Jeremy. Yes, the same mounts that were compatible with Komodo will be compatible with Raptor. You just now have the benefit of working with full frame lenses, and you can always see that on red.com/third-party approved. You can see those mounts on there.
Yeah, and you'll want to play around with some of the physical interactions because, as it says in there, this RMI section does hang over the front a little bit. So there may be some interactions you want to make sure work out from a physical standpoint before you pull a trigger.
Oh, there's another interesting one related to accessories here. So is there a way to get larger batteries on the Raptor? So hopefully coming in the December timeframe, again, pending deliveries and part shortages, we're going to have our own gold mount and V-lock adapters that will go onto the back of the camera. Now, during the announcement live stream, we did show a little tease of what that looks like. So this is kind of what that would look like. It basically goes directly onto the back of the camera, and you've got a really nice system to get those full-size ones, which then clear the rear SDIs. So that'll be your solution. I've seen some like the Teradek Bolt 4K V-Lock pass-through mount that can go on there. Some people have been using 15mm rods to get a little bit of space, and actually that's the way you can get hot swap. You could put a really small 90 watt-hour battery on there and then have 15mm rods to a larger battery plate, and then you've got hot swap between those. So there's options out there at the moment, and then there's lots of exciting options coming soon as well.
And I'm using one of the 150s from Anton Bauer, and coming from a DSMC2, it's really nice because those were 153 watt-hour bricks. So going from a 153 to a 150, I'm really not seeing it other than my profile and my rear architecture of my camera is nice and slim. And then that moonlights on my DSMC2 cameras just as well.
Yep, and that's something that's a huge benefit of the 6-pin on the camera too, is the stuff that Johnny was saying, that because that's already out there, there are accessories that'll plug into that and give you more powering options if you want larger batteries that are on those standard plates. But you always have that V-Lock slot right on the back that's micro, and to James's point, there's a few people making 150s now, I think. So it's like, it's still, you've still got that decently larger battery life availability, even straight on the back.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I've seen quite a fun question here. So coming on from a lot of those things with ND and stuff, when we get more info about XL, price and date, well, if you go onto the V-RAPTOR page and scroll right down to the very bottom, there's some exciting info there in relating to the features and also a little tease of a price and also the rough time frame, obviously component shortages, all those kind of things. So still a bit of a open book as to when that will be coming. But if you want to go check out a little bit about the price, you'll see something there.
And I know Jared's in the chat, so I don't want to say too much, but we mentioned the live stream. If you feel like going back and watching that live stream, there was a couple other teases in there, and one of those might be that new RF to PL mount that is also one of those cool coming soon things.
Yeah.
But just wanted to bring that up. I know that was shared, and Johnny, I know we talk about it. One of the benefits there is, you know, that will have the same thing. Electronic control, a clear option, and I won't say any more features, but I know that was leaked in our last live stream, so that's a good one you can go back and see for yourself.
Well, again, it's kind of expanding on, you know, what we had with the DSMC2 generation. You had a really small, lightweight, nimble camera. You had the Ranger variant, and that's what this V-RAPTOR and XL kind of thing will bring similarly as well, having a fully integrated studio camera, everything you need, and then the nimble, fully powered V-RAPTOR that can still act like its bigger brother, but it can just get smaller, where XL can't get smaller because it's already a big boy.
Yes.
And that's when the fun question comes up of how do I get the RF mount on the XL? And I go, you don't. That's where you just work with the Raptor, right? I think it's great to have a sledgehammer, a multi-tool, and then Komodo is my needle nose plier. They're all recording to red code. They all work with the new Red Control app. And it's really nice to be able to pair all three of them, or we will be able to pair all three of them.
Yeah, somebody asked about 12G SDI safety, and I have been following the same procedure I do on any 12G SDI, which is to power the accessories and then plug the cables. That's just how you should be approaching this. It's a small extra step, but it is an extra step that is worth it to save your port. So
I mean that's one of the
is.
things. Kind of initially, people were a little bit confused, but basically, as long as your device has power, and a good way of checking that is by turning it on. So ensure that device has a battery or it's plugged in. Then when it's on, you know that it's grounded, because that's kind of the issue here, where something doesn't become grounded, the power pin hits first, and that power has to find a route to go through. What else have we got? I think we find a few more, and then potentially we're almost going on that kind of hour time frame. So if there's any other final little questions to wrap up.
I saw one come through about the CF Express Type 2 media cards that are going to work with this. Just know that we are working with with all the manufacturers out there that are providing us cards. It's not something that we plan on just having the one. There will be additional cards. I don't want to say too much more, but even from ourselves, we have our 660 and we have our 1.3 that's coming out here shortly thereafter. And we do hope to have some more options for you here. Just currently, everything we've tested wasn't able to meet that very, very fast read and write speed that we needed to do that 8K 120. We're not being cheeky here. I really am telling you here, for best results, we do recommend the Red Approved Media, and just hang tight. There will be some more options.
I mean, that's one of the things on a lot of cards, although they say 1,500 or 1,700, typically that's only for a very short duration, typically for like a stills camera. Doing that 8K, as James said, 8K 120 for 15 minutes, 20 minutes, depending how large your card is, has very different requirements from heat, the controllers that manage all of that. So that's something that we've had to work with a lot of these manufacturers to ensure that their cards can meet those, and hopefully there'll be some more coming soon. So definitely keep your eyes peeled. We've got a approved accessory section on red.com, so definitely keep your eyes on that as to when any more get approved and posted on there.
And somebody asked about data rates, and this is exactly the time to talk about it, right? Like that, this is why the data rates are why this card thing is something we're even talking about. And that's because this camera is doing stuff that cameras aren't doing at the moment. It's pushing through a lot of data to get those high frame rates. And so that is going to be, you know, something to think about with storage and with the cards that you're getting and those things.
And I am holding up the two different card readers, Raptor and Komodo. They are physically two different cards. And I know the question comes up, why wouldn't you just use the same card? And back to Clay's point, I don't think you would want us to limit the V-RAPTOR on its frame rate capabilities or its resolutions. That's when you're pushing a 35 megapixel, 120 frames per second, or 2K 600, or my sweet spot, 4K 300. Love that, right? Just being able to do that. I would not be able to do that with the max data rates with the CFast 2.0. Just not possible.
Right. Yep. Totally true.
I think potentially then, guys, do you think we should answer one more and then wrap it up?
Yeah,
Sure.
I think that sounds about right.
See if there's...
Do you want to get Jeremy's question, or is there another one? Or
Or about the RF to EF adapter with variable ND?
I don't know if we're going to make one, Jeremy, because
Yeah.
honestly, right now on red.com, you can get the Canon RF to EF with the ND or the clear one. If you don't want to have two adapters, get the clear tray, and really I swap in that clear tray, and that's the best option.
Right, or like Johnny was saying with Breakthrough and some of the other options available to you, because I do think like there is some IR leak, there is some things that go on with variable NDs that some people are going to be a little bit like, I don't know if I want to go that route. And if that's you, there are options out there for you. It's just not something that I'm aware of us, working on.
But I think, oh yeah, and just to finalize, just from Clayton asking there, from Let's Make Movies, is there a gold mount version? As we said, there's going to be an adapter for that to allow you to do that, so that there'll be a gold mount adapter that goes straight on the back. And I'm sure there'll be some nice V-lock breakouts that go to Anton Bauer, fish fins or shark fins, all those kind of things. So I'm sure all the accessory manufacturers will be piling very, very soon with all of their cool options for this camera as well. But yeah, I think at this point, guys, we've just hit the hour mark. So I think that would be a nice place to end this. It's been amazing chatting to everyone. We're really excited to see as the black V-Raptors start shipping. Any last words from you guys want to say before we wrap this up?
I'm just super excited for people to really be getting this camera in their hands and to see what people are going to make, because I'm having a lot of fun and I'm not nearly as good as a bunch of you guys out there.
And please feel free to share your footage, right? I think that's one of the great things about Red, right? A lot of our reels are customer footage, and so hashtag it, put Raptor out there. I know our marketing team's always looking for footage from our customers right at these cameras land. So yeah, we love to see it, and feel free to email it to us at solitaryseries@red.com. We always love the interaction as well.
Awesome, yeah, we'll wrap this up. Anything you want to see about Raptor going forward, let us know for the next sessions that are coming up. So drop us a comment down below after the session is finished, or pop us an email, and go shoot something, and we'll see you all soon in the next one. Thanks, everyone. Bye.